Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take that stack of reading you've got, all the complex stuff, and turn it into insights you can actually use. Today we're getting into something huge. Political and ideological polarization. It's everywhere, isn't it?
It really is. And we're not just talking about gridlock in government, though. That's part of it.
No, it's more personal. It's that, feeling you get seeing certain Facebook posts.
Yeah.
Or dreading that family dinner.
Exactly. It's putting a real strain on relationships with people we actually care about. And it goes deeper. It's taking a measurable toll on mental health. Seriously. Surveys are showing adults reporting more stress, more anxiety, and it's directly linked to political conflict.
Wow. So people are even, avoiding friends and family just to keep the peace.
Yeah, it's happening a lot. So our mission today feels pretty crucial. We want to move beyond just saying, be nice. Well, it's not enough.
Right. We need something more concrete.
We do. We're aiming to give you a real blueprint. We're pulling together practical skills communication, managing your emotions with some pretty deep insights from academia.
Okay. Like what kind of insights?
We're looking at political psychology, research on how people view time, past versus future, and studies on empathy. It's about understanding why we disagree so fiercely.
So it's the psychology behind the argument.
And precisely.
And how we can actually connect across those lines. Online, in person, doesn't matter. This deep dive is meant to be your guide.
A guide for navigating those really tough conversations, whether it's, Twitter trolls or your uncle at Thanksgiving.
It's about strategy, really. Strategic empathy. Understanding where people are coming from fundamentally and engaging effectively without, giving up your own values.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's jump in. All right, let's start with the basics. The toolkit. Because, let's face it, disagreement is going to happen.
Absolutely. And honestly, just agreeing all the time, that's easy. It doesn't stretch you. Right. The real growth, intellectually, relationally, that often comes when we really, really don't see eye to eye.
But that growth only happens if we keep it rational, constructive.
Instead of letting it turn into, emotional warfare.
Exactly. Which happens way too often. People either avoid disagreement altogether or they just lose it.
Okay, so our sources pull together some core rules. How many are there?
5 key ones, designed to keep disagreements constructive no matter who you're talking to. Friend, family, coworker.
Okay, rule number 1.
Don't make it personal. This sounds simple, but it takes real effort.
Especially when you feel that anger rising up.
Yes. When you feel that heat, you have to consciously shift your focus. Tell yourself, I'm angry at the idea, the concept, not the person.
You're challenging the argument, not attacking their character.
Exactly. Not issuing a character indictment.
Got it. Which leads smoothly into rule 2, I imagine.
It does. Rule 2, avoid put-downs.
Like calling someone's idea stupid.
Right. Or ignorant. The second you do that, the conversation's over. They're just defending themselves.
So instead of thinking, that's ridiculous, you say
something more like, I don't quite agree with that premise, and here's how I see it differently. Or, I have a different take on that.
And definitely no yelling, sarcasm.
No. Or those little derogatory comments. They're just verbal attacks, really.
Okay. Rule 3. This one's key in lots of communication advice.
Use I statements. It's fundamental. Communicate your feelings, your thoughts, your needs. Don't project onto them.
The classic you always versus I feel.
Exactly that. Think about it. If you say, you always minimize this issue, what happens?
They deny it. Argue about whether they always do it.
Right. It becomes about defending their behavior. But if you shift...
How would you phrase it using I?
You could say, I feel frustrated when it seems like the severity of this issue is being minimized because it makes me feel like my concerns aren't being heard.
So the focus is on your feeling and your need to be heard.
Yes. It invites them into your experience. It doesn't demand they defend themselves. It's a game changer. Fight versus conversation.
Huge difference. Okay, rule 4. This one sounds hard.
It is. Maybe the hardest. Cognitively. Listen actively.
Meaning
you actually focus fully on the speaker. You show respect by giving them your complete attention.
Not just waiting for them to take a breath so you can jump in.
Exactly. And crucially, you have to stop yourself from mentally rehearsing your rebuttal while they're still talking.
Or thinking about why they're wrong or planning your killer counter argument.
Yes. Just listen. Try to understand.
And how do you show you've listened?
By repeating their key points back.
Yeah.
Briefly. Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, your main concern is that this policy could lead to X consequence. Is that basically it?
So you confirm you understood before you state your own view.
Right. It validates them, makes them feel heard, increases the odds they'll listen back.
Okay, makes sense. And the final one, Rule 5.
This is the anchor, the absolute foundation for all the others. Stay calm.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. But if you lose your cool, if your emotions hijack your brain, all the other rules just collapse. Poof.
So even if the other person is getting heated, yelling,
You might have to be the one to hold it together, the mature one managing the temperature.
that takes serious skill. Staying rational when you feel passionate.
It's maybe the most vital skill for bridging these divides, but it's learnable.
Okay, we need to talk about online, because that's where so much of this conflict just explodes.
Absolutely. And our sources point out a huge issue with platforms like social media. They're built more for one-sided broadcasting than actual dialogue.
It's Facebook to Facebook, not face-to-face, like yelling into the void sometimes.
Pretty much. And a big reason it gets so hostile is the lack of nonverbal cues.
Right. No tone of voice, eye contact, body language.
All that magic of mess, as one source puts it. The stuff that helps us see the other person as a real, feeling human being.
Without it.
We filter ourselves, we curate, we edit. It creates this psychological distance, makes it easier to dehumanize.
Okay, so how do we apply those rules online? ISES, that's the International Society for Technology and Education, has some tips.
They do. And they map pretty well onto the in-person rules. First up, comprehension. Take the time to actually read and understand.
The whole original post, and the comments already there.
Yes. Before you type a single word, stop reacting to just the headline or the first sentence. Don't just skim and fling.
Okay, what's next?
Second, approach it as a chance to learn. Seriously. Especially with charged topics.
So read more, ask clarifying questions. Maybe more than you actually state your own opinion.
Could be. The goal should be an exchange of ideas, not just dropping your opinion bomb and leaving.
Right, makes sense. Third,
Carefully craft your message. Think about who you're talking to.
avoid typos, half-finished thoughts.
Yeah, or really obscure slang that no one outside your immediate circle will get. If people can't easily understand you, you've already lost effectiveness.
Good point. Number 4.
When you state your position, especially if it's controversial, present evidence and personal experiences.
Instead of just resorting to insults or name-calling.
Exactly. It takes more effort, sure, but it's way more respectful. And honestly, your own lived experience can be incredibly powerful, hard to argue with.
True. And the last one.
Uphold the community's norms. If you're in a specific group or forum, know the rules. Understand the agreed-upon guidelines for interaction.
They're like guardrails for digital civility.
That's a good way to put it. They keep things on topic, keep it respectful. If you don't know them, maybe pause, watch how others interact, or just ask. Don't just barge in.
Okay, we've got the toolkit for how to talk. Now let's dig deeper into the why. Why do we disagree so fundamentally?
Yeah, this is where the academic research gets really fascinating. Let's, for a moment, forget specific policies. We're looking at core psychological differences that seem to line up with political views.
Okay, so what's one of the big ones?
One really striking finding is about temporal orientation. Basically, whether you're psychologically more oriented towards the past or the future.
Wait, like time travel?
Not quite. More like where your focus naturally rests. Think about President Biden's framing. Move forward or move backwards.
Yeah.
Build the future or obsess about the past.
Okay, so that's not just talk. It taps into something real.
It seems to. Let's start with conservatism and the past. Historically, modern conservatism traces roots back to Edmund Burke, critiquing the French Revolution back in 1790.
What was his main point?
He warned against radical sudden change. Tearing down institutions overnight, he argued, messes up social structures that evolve slowly in unpredictable ways. It risks stability, order.
So preference for conserving what exists, how does that link to psychology?
It connects to two key types of underlying motives. First, epistemic motives,
Epistemic meaning.
related to knowledge and certainty, and the basic human need for certainty, order, structure, cognitive closure, wanting clear answers, avoiding ambiguity.
And the past feels more certain than the future.
Exactly. Traditions offer predictability. They tell us how things are done, how people generally behave. It reduces uncertainty.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second set of motives?
Existential motives. These often show up as a stronger desire for social connectedness, for shared meaning, for belonging to a stable, cohesive group.
So putting those together, conservatives tend to value tradition, order, stability, more than progress, potential chaos, flexibility.
Generally, yes. Research shows they tend to score lower on personality traits like openness to experience compared to liberals. They have a lower tolerance for ambiguity and uncertainty, psychologically speaking.
Wow, okay, that's a huge insight. Because if avoiding uncertainty is a core driver, then how you talk about things really matters.
Absolutely. You mentioned research where framing policies as a return to the past actually decreased conservative opposition.
Yeah, that sounds almost manipulative. How does that work?
It taps directly into those epistemic needs for certainty. Take COVID-19 measures. Researchers tested different frames for masks or vaccines.
Yeah.
When they framed these measures as a return to the past, like showing an old photo of a mask from the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic,
Yeah. Suggesting it's traditional, not some radical new thing.
precisely, conservative support for the policies went up significantly.
Whoa. Just invoking that sense of nostalgia, that longing for a supposedly more stable past, was enough.
It seemed to be mediated by that feeling, yes, collective nostalgia. Conversely, framing the same policies as a move toward a new future or building back better,
Yeah.
less effective for that group, it likely triggered anxiety about change and uncertainty.
So this isn't just superficial rhetoric.
Doesn't look like it. We see similar things with climate change policies.
Yeah.
Opposition dropped among conservatives when policies were framed in ways that appealed to the need for closure and predictability.
Like focusing on stable borders or local energy independence, things that sound like order, not radical change.
Exactly. So a lot of the partisan divide might not just be about policy details, but about this deep, motivated difference in whether you're anchored in the past or launching into the future.
And liberals, where do they fit?
Liberal tendencies generally lean towards progress, sometimes disruption, and the future. They tend to score lower on those needs for certainty and predictability. Maintaining the past just isn't as psychologically valuable for them, on average.
So that temporal focus past versus future is a really fundamental driver of the political gap.
It appears to be one of the core psychological drivers, yes.
Okay, let's add another layer. Morality. We all think we're moral, right?
Of course. But the research suggests our moral priorities can differ quite a bit across the political spectrum. This is where moral foundations theory comes in.
Moral foundations. What's the basic idea?
The theory proposes that human morality is built on a few universal, kind of innate foundations. We can group them. First, the individualizing foundations.
Focus on the individual.
Right. Protecting individual rights and welfare. These are care-harm things like sympathy, compassion, nurturing, and fairness cheating, justice, rights, equality, reciprocity.
Okay, care and fairness. What's the other group?
The binding foundations. These are more about social cohesion, protecting the group, maintaining order and tradition.
So group-focused versus individual-focused.
Largely, yes. The binding group includes loyalty betrayal, patriotism, group identity, sticking with your team, then authority subversion, respecting legitimate authority, tradition, institutions, and finally, sanctity degradation.
Sanctity, like purity.
Yeah, respecting purity, avoiding contamination, upholding the sacred. It often drives reactions to things like pollution, certain sexual behaviors, or issues around bodily integrity.
Okay, 5 foundations. Care, fairness, loyalty, authority, sanctity. How does this map onto politics?
Here's the key divide found in much of the research. Liberals tend to strongly prioritize the individualizing foundations, care and fairness, over the binding ones.
So sympathy, justice, individual rights are paramount.
Generally, yes. Conservatives, on the other hand, tend to endorse all 5 foundations more equally. They rely much more heavily on those binding foundations, loyalty, authority, sanctity, than liberals typically do.
Okay, wow. That explains a lot about why arguments break down.
Right. If you frame an argument only around fairness or compassion, you're hitting liberal moral buttons perfectly.
But you might completely miss the conservative emphasis on, say, loyalty or social order.
Exactly. Frame climate policy just about preventing harm, caring uttery. You connect with liberals. Frame it also in terms of protecting the purity of our sacred natural heritage, sanctity. You might open a door for conservative engagement.
Has this been tested, like the temporal framing?
It has, again with COVID-19 messaging. Messages were rated as more effective when the framing aligned with the recipient's moral profile.
Can you give an example? A contrast.
Sure. For conservatives, a message using binding foundations worked better. Something like calling a mask a patriotic solution to protect our community from this disgusting pandemic.
Yeah.
That hits loyalty, authority, and sanctity.
Okay.
And for liberals.
They responded better to individualizing frames, like presenting a mask as a fair solution to this harmful pandemic that protects the most vulnerable, focus on fairness and care. So if you genuinely want to persuade someone across the aisle, you need to speak their moral language.
It certainly helps. You have to translate your message into the moral framework they already prioritize.
All right, we've looked at the roots of difference. Now, how do we actually use our own minds, our own skills, to bridge that gap? We hear empathy and perspective taking thrown around a lot.
Yeah, often interchangeably. But the research insists they're distinct, and that distinction is really important for managing conflict.
Okay, break it down for us. What's the difference?
Let's get the terms clear. Empathy is mostly an emotional state. It's feeling what someone else is feeling. That visceral, gut-level sharing of emotion when you see their distress or joy. It's reactive.
And perspective taking.
Perspective taking is a cognitive skill. It's the deliberate, conscious mental effort to imagine the world from their viewpoint, their context, their circumstances. It's proactive, requires thinking.
And the research on empathy itself is, well, a bit worrying.
It is. There was a major meta-analysis looking at college students over decades. It found measurable empathy levels dropped by about 40% between the late 70s and the 2000s.
40%? Wow. Any theories why?
Well, that decline happened alongside the rise of digital communication. The thinking is, when we interact without tone, eye contact, body language,
All that stuff we talked about earlier.
right, that real-time feedback loop that naturally triggers empathy kind of breaks down. We lose the emotional input when we're just scrolling past posts.
Okay, so empathy is declining, but how necessary is it, really? There's a thought experiment about this.
Yeah, the drowning child. If you see a small child drowning in a shallow pond, you don't need to feel their terror to know you should jump in and save them, right? Assuming you're not a psychopath.
Right, the moral action feels almost instinctive.
That's the point. Well, empathy is generally good for bonding. It's not strictly necessary for moral action. We seem to have innate drives towards fairness and helping.
But perspective taking,
Yeah.
that is necessary.
It's considered crucial for making good moral decisions because it requires that cognitive work to really understand the situation, the consequences, the context before you act. It's about understanding, not just feeling.
But you said perspective taking can sometimes backfire. How? Isn't imagining someone else's life always good?
Not necessarily, because perspective taking is about information processing, not automatic compassion. In competitive situations, trying to take the other person's perspective might actually increase stereotyping.
How?
You might start predicting their actions based on crude stereotypes, thinking you understand their strategy. And even worse, when looking at marginalized groups, sometimes perspective taking can lead people to blame them for their situation.
Instead of seeing systemic issues.
Exactly. Like, if I were in their shoes, I would have done X, Y, Z differently. It can minimize structural barriers. So it's a powerful tool, but needs careful handling.
Okay, so handle with care. But when used right, it's powerful. JPEL research says it helps build trust, cooperation.
Yeah, that cognitive exercise, really trying to imagine a day in their shoes, is proven to foster inclusion, reduce bias, build bonds in divided communities.
Do we have real-world examples where this worked?
We do. Compelling ones. In Turkey, schools used perspective-taking activities. They had students reflect on each other's lives.
And the result?
It significantly cut peer violence between Turkish students and Syrian refugee students, built stronger connections, more altruism.
Wow. Any others?
In Uganda, a similar short conversational program focused on perspective-taking reduced prejudice towards South Sudanese refugees. It makes a measurable difference.
The real test, though, is behavior, right? Not just saying you feel differently, but actually doing something.
Exactly, and this is where studies using immersive tech, like virtual reality, are fascinating.
VR. How does that work for perspective taking?
Researchers use VR to tackle attitudes toward homelessness. They compared just reading a narrative about homelessness, that's NPT, narrative perspective taking, with an immersive VR experience, VRPT.
What was the VR like?
Participants were put into the experience. Based on a documentary, they simulated things like being evicted, living in a car, being harassed by police. Really intense.
Okay. And how did they measure success?
Not just by asking how people felt afterwards. Everyone felt sympathetic. The key measure was behavior. Signing a petition, supporting local affordable housing.
In the VR group.
The VRBT group had significantly more people sign the petition compared to the narrative group immediately after.
Even though signing meant what?
It explicitly meant endorsing higher local taxes to pay for that housing.
So they went from feeling bad to being willing to accept a personal cost.
That's the crucial finding. The deeper the cognitive immersion, the better you are at truly stepping into another's perspective, the more likely you are to move from just thinking or feeling to taking meaningful action.
So perspective taking is the internal skill. Dialogue is where we practice it
Oh,
together.
right. It's the structured exercise.
Yeah.
Journalist Ann Curry had a great quote about this. She said, approaching conversations with curiosity and humanity isn't the same as condoning injustice.
What's the goal then?
Simply to understand each other better by deeply listening, seeking context, seeking the human behind the viewpoint, not necessarily agreement.
Is there a model for this kind of structured dialogue?
A really powerful example is the Story Exchange Project. It brought together two very different groups, university students from Maynooth University and inmates from Mountjoy Prison in Ireland.
Students and inmates, how did that work?
The core method was incredibly smart. They paired people up, student and inmate. Each person shared a personal story, a memory.
Okay.
But here's the twist. After, say, the student shared her story, the inmate partner had to retell that student's story in the first person, as if he were her.
Whoa. So he'd say, my name is Sarah, I'm 22, and tell her story from her perspective.
Exactly, focusing on her feelings, her challenges, as if they were his own, and vice versa.
That sounds incredibly powerful for breaking down barriers, having to literally voice someone else's experience.
It was designed for exactly that, to force that perspective taking, move people from an us versus them mindset towards a shared sense of community, shared humanity.
Did it help the inmates specifically?
Reports suggest it really helped them reflect on their own lives, maybe see unfairness or privilege in new ways.
Yeah.
By directly comparing their experiences with their partners, it created this shared human landscape that politics often hides.
Okay, last section. Let's bring all these psychological insights together with some really practical, actionable strategies. How do we actually do this in our own lives?
First things first, logistics matter. If possible, aim for face-to-face, or at least video calls where you can see expressions.
Get those nonverbal cues back in the mix.
Right. Find somewhere private, comfortable. Set the stage for listening, not a shouting match.
Okay. Then what?
You need clarity on your motivation. Where are you really having this conversation? Be honest with yourself.
Is it to preserve a relationship, learn something new, sharpen my own arguments?
Knowing your why helps keep you on track, prevents it from just becoming a battle.
And anticipate the roadblocks.
Definitely. The obvious barriers are avoidance, just not wanting to talk, or anger, either expecting it or getting hit with it.
But you mentioned something more subtle, conflicting motivations.
Yes, this is a big one. It's when you want two opposite things at once.
Right.
Like part of you genuinely wants connection, understanding, dialogue. But another part may be hidden, just wants to be validated, wants to win the argument, wants to be proven right.
And that hidden desire to win.
It sabotages everything, undermines genuine listening every single time.
So the guiding principle has to be a genuine intention to understand, not necessarily to change their mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And be flexible. Don't force it. Wait until everyone's actually ready and willing to talk.
And be kind to yourself in the process.
Yes. Practice compassion and self-compassion. Bridging divides is emotionally hard work. You'll make mistakes, they'll make mistakes. It's okay.
Last point on prep. Set norms. Ground rules.
Yeah. Agree on some guidelines up front or right at the start. Two really good ones to model are respect obvious, but needs stating, and speaking from your own experience.
Meaning avoid generalizations, like all conservatives think X or liberals always do Y.
Exactly. Stop talking about abstract groups. Talk about your thoughts, your feelings, your lived experiences. Use I statements, not they statements, about entire populations.
Okay, best laid plans. But then a hot topic comes up and bam, your body just reacts.
It does. We need to recognize that primal threat response. The fight, flight, freeze thing. It's ancient wiring.
The saber-toothed tiger response from 30,000 years ago?
Pretty much. Your sympathetic nervous system floods you with adrenaline, heart pounds, breathing gets shallow.
And the rational part of your brain just goes offline.
Essentially, yes. The prefrontal cortex gets bypassed. Clear thinking. Impossible in that state.
So the goal isn't to not feel that, but to manage it.
Right. To avoid just reacting, yelling, storming off, and instead learn to rebound. Shift gears. That's the forward path.
How do we do that? How do we hit the brakes on that ancient response?
First step is just awareness. You have to notice it happening in your body. Tight shoulders, clenched jaw, racing heart, shallow breath.
Acknowledge the physical signs.
You can't control what you don't notice. Once you spot it, you can intervene.
Using what? Grounding techniques.
Exactly. These are physical anchors to the present moment. Simple things. Breathe deeply, slowly, rhythmically. Focus on the exhale.
Or focus on physical sensations.
Yes. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice the pressure of the chair supporting you. Bring your attention back to the physical here and now. It tells your body, no tiger here, false alarm.
Calms the system down. Any other techniques?
Self-distancing is another powerful cognitive tool.
Self-distancing, like floating above the situation?
Kind of. Try to mentally take an outside perspective. Imagine you're watching this conversation like a fly on the wall, or watching a movie scene.
How does that help?
It creates psychological distance, shifts it from, this is happening to me, to, I am observing this event. Research shows it cools emotional heat, helps resolve conflict more constructively.
So if we want to bridge divides, we need to get past the political labels first, the ones that trigger all those defenses we talked about.
That's a great way to start. Make a conscious effort to put people before politics, especially early in the conversation.
How? What does that look like?
Initiate with open-ended questions that get at personal stories, values, experiences, before you get into the thorny policy stuff.
Like what kind of questions?
Groups like the People's Supper use prompts like, tell us about a time you felt deeply misunderstood, or share a story about someone you love but strongly disagree with.
Questions that reveal the person, build common ground, maybe some empathy.
Exactly. Build trust first. Find the shared humanity.
There was also research about using a historical perspective. How did that work?
Yeah, this was interesting. They had Democrats and Republicans reflect not on their current political opponents, but on what opponents from the other party were like in the past, previous generations.
Focusing on how things used to be.
Right. The idea was to find common ground in the past. It led both groups to focus more on shared fundamental values, maybe things like hard work, community, patriotism, that they felt the past generation of the other side embodied.
And this reduced current hostility.
It did. Reduced partisan animosity, increased general trust, even led to more cooperation in a game involving sharing money.
So finding that historical common ground made them see the current outgroup a bit more charitably.
Seems like it. Without requiring anyone to compromise their current political identity, it just reframed the relationship slightly.
Okay, let's wrap up with some really tangible tools. Things people can actually use. There was an anecdote about the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, 2018. Facing a government shutdown. A bipartisan group of centrist senators were trying to hash out a deal, but it was chaos. One called it a cacophony of voices.
Everyone talking over each other.
Exactly. The natural human tendency in conflict. So their solution was incredibly simple, almost elementary.
What did they do?
They introduced a talking stick. Seriously. Later switched to a small rubber ball, less formal. But the rule was only the person holding the object could speak.
Huh. Back to basics. And it worked.
Apparently, yes. That simple physical constraint forced them to take turns, forced listening. It created a more collegial atmosphere, and they eventually reached the breakthrough that ended the shutdown.
Sometimes the simplest tools are best, just stopping the interruptions.
Sometimes. And finally, let's touch on a concept that kind of sums up this whole deep dive. Fierce civility.
Fierce civility. Sounds like a contradiction.
A little. It's also called respectful confrontation. The idea is you disagree, strongly perhaps, but without being disagreeable. You stand firm in your truth, but deliver it with civility, with humanity.
How do you keep the fierce part from just becoming aggressive?
It requires vulnerability, actually. Recognizing that true power often lies in honesty, not aggression. And that real kindness isn't about just being nice or avoiding conflict. It's about transcending that need.
And it pushes for transformation, not just change. What's the difference there?
It's a subtle but important philosophical point. Asking someone to change can feel like an attack on their identity, like you're asking them to be someone they're not.
Which triggers defensiveness.
Right. But framing it as transformation suggests they can shift, evolve, move from rigid views towards new understanding. It acknowledges we're all capable of growth, of becoming something different, rather than being forced into someone else's mold. Hashtag outro.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground, from basic communication skills right through to deep political psychology. What are the main takeaways for people listening?
I think it boils down to two big things. First, bridging these divides absolutely requires emotional regulation. Staying calm, using those grounding techniques, learning to rebound from that threat response instead of just reacting.
Manage yourself first.
Manage yourself first. And second, it takes psychological strategy. Understanding why people hold opposing views, maybe it's that past versus future orientation or different moral priorities, you need to tailor your approach.
And remembering that these skills, they're like a muscle.
Exactly. They need practice, consistent exercise. The goal isn't to win anymore. The The focus shifts completely. It becomes about genuinely trying to understand, trying to connect, even when the differences feel huge.
Okay, here's a final thought, maybe a bit provocative. We've talked about how these deep divides aren't always about facts, but about these conflicting psychological needs. Stability versus progress, past versus future.
Right, the temporal framing and moral foundations.
So if political leaders, or maybe just the loudest voices, keep using that framing, past versus future, us versus them specifically to deepen the divisions, to play on those needs and make it a zero-sum game.
Which seems to happen quite a lot.
How can you, the listener, armed with what we've discussed today, fierce civility, understanding temporal frames, moral languages, how can you consciously refuse to play that zero-sum game? How can you change the frame of the conversation yourself right from the start?
That's the real challenge, isn't it? Using this knowledge not just to understand, but to actively step outside that destructive pattern, to change the game by changing your own approach.
A powerful thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope this gives you some tools, not just to survive those difficult conversations, but maybe even to find some common ground in them. We'll see you next time.